Jamie Tremble, Emanuel Ross, or KingJoseph Edwards? Who's going to take a big leap in 2025?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in a Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And, of course, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on this week's Poll Friday, I asked you guys the question, which true sophomore do you believe is going to take the biggest step forward for Syracuse football in 2025? You got tight end Jamie Tremble, receiver Emanuel Ross, or defensive end KingJoseph Edwards. All three of those players that I just mentioned were four-star recruits in the class of 2024 that saw limited playing time as true freshmen. Now, before we continue with this Poll Friday, I did make a small error when asking this question. Emanuel Ross is technically not a true sophomore this upcoming season. He only played in 4 games in 2024, which means he will enter next year as a redshirt freshman instead of a true sophomore. But for all intents and purposes, Emanuel Ross fits the same profile as Jamie Tremble and KingJoseph Edwards. These were highly touted 4-star recruits in the class of 2024. They didn't see the field a whole lot last season and are all looking to take a significant step forward this upcoming year for Syracuse football. So I apologize. He is not a true sophomore. He is a redshirt freshman, but it really does not impact this exercise. There were about 200 votes on this week's Poll Friday, and the winner was KingJoseph Edwards at 65%, Jamie Tremble in second place at 23%, and Emanuel Ross at 12%. And I disagree with the majority here. I believe that the player of those three that's going to take the biggest step forward in 2025 as of right now, and look, my answer is subject to change because it's only February 14th. Syracuse football is not playing until late August. But as of right now, I'm taking Jamie Tremble. And the reason why I'm taking Tremble is this. I believe he has the quote-unquote easiest path to playing time next year because he's projected to be the unquestioned starting tight end. And we have known this for about a year. This has been a year in the making that Jamie Tremble was going to be the heir apparent to Oronde Gadsden. Oronde Gadsden, we all expected that 2024 was going to be his final season. Sure enough, he has another big year coming off the injury, and he enters the NFL draft. In comes Jamie Tremble. Now, his scouting report in high school, he was more known as a receiving tight end. He is a very similar player to Oronde Gadsden. But the reason why Jamie Tremble didn't really have to see the field a whole lot last year is because Oronde was there, and you also had Dan Villari as a backup tight end who maybe at that point of his career was a better blocker than Jamie Tremble was at that time. I remember having Locked On recruiting expert Brian Smith on the podcast before the season, and he said that Jamie Tremble is a true freshman that needs to hit the weight room as a true freshman, which is very common, by the way. That's more often than not the reason why a true freshman doesn't see the field for a football team in college, right? So Tremble was listed by Syracuse at 6'4", 208. Oronde Gadsden was at 6'5", 236 last season. Now, the good news for you all is that I went back to Syracuse football's roster in 2021. That was Oronde Gadsden's true freshman year with the Orange, and he was listed at 6'5", 210, which is not much of a difference of where Tremble entered last season. And by 2022, Oronde Gadsden only gained 6 pounds, according to the Syracuse website, and was still an All-American tight end. So Jamie Tremble, it's not like he has so much further to go as far as weight training, just perhaps a little bit more meat on the bone. Overall, I think with him having the easiest path to starting playing time as the tight end, Tremble is going to take the biggest step forward for the Orange of Emanuel Ross and KingJoseph Edwards as well. Coming up, we'll talk about Emanuel Ross and KingJoseph Edwards. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off and use code LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnCollege50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in on the action, and if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I'm Jackson Holzer, and this is Locked On Syracuse. And on this week's Poll Friday, I asked you guys the question, which true sophomore do you think is going to break out for the Orange in 2025? I believe that of the 3 players I mentioned, Jamie Tremble, Emanuel Ross, who's not technically a true sophomore, and KingJoseph Edwards, that Tremble is the one who will break out for the Orange in 2025. We talked about Tremble in the previous segment. Let's go over Emanuel Ross and KingJoseph Edwards. And we'll start by talking about Emanuel Ross, who is 6'2", 202 pounds on last year's roster. So he only played in 4 games, as I mentioned, and had 5 catches for 78 yards, but the production does not matter in those 4 games. What matters is he only played 4, so he maintains an extra year of eligibility. I think part of the reason why I'm a little bit skeptical of Emanuel Ross next year is, what's his role? What's Emanuel Ross's role on the team? Last season, Emanuel Ross was listed on the depth chart when he was listed behind Trevor Pena. Trevor Pena is the slot receiver of Syracuse football. So that means that Emanuel Ross on the depth chart was listed when he was listed as the backup slot receiver. Well, in case you missed it, Trevor Pena is back. And he's coming off a second-team All-ACC season, so he's going to be the starting slot receiver. That is locked in. It's possible that Emanuel Ross is going to play in more games this upcoming season and see the field more often, but if he's going to be a slot receiver again for this upcoming year, he's going to be the backup once again to Trevor Pena, barring injury. Now, if they decide to use Emanuel Ross as an outside wide receiver, which I do think is possible, well, then you got a competition. I think Daryl Gill will likely earn one of the outside wide receiver spots, and that leaves one spot open, I guess a starting spot, I should say, for Emanuel Ross, Amari Hatcher, Justice Ross Simmons, Zede Haynes, and even perhaps someone that we're not thinking about. So Emanuel Ross, the reason why I wouldn't take him over a guy like Jamie Tremble is because, again, what is Emanuel Ross's role on the team going to be next season? Is he going to be a slot receiver or an outside receiver? That's something that we'll figure out, hopefully, come the spring game, which the Lally Foundation tweeted out is going to be on April 12th. Now let's get to KingJoseph Edwards. He played in 5 games last season, so unfortunately that means he is a true sophomore in 2025. Now, he did see significant game action in the 4th quarter against Holy Cross, And that got a lot of people excited, including myself, because he had 3 sacks in that one quarter. But again, this goes back to what I said about the defense yesterday in KingJoseph Edwards. The defensive line just has a lot of competition on it. And they also recently added David Reese from Cal, who is an edge rusher, and he's got 11 sacks in the past 2 seasons playing at a power conference level. I think it's likely that David Reese is going to be one of the starting defensive ends for the Orange in 2025, which means there's one spot up for grabs. And I guess it's possible that KingJoseph Edwards snatches that other spot. Totally. I'm not saying it's not. Same thing with Emanuel Ross. Could he easily be a starting outside wide receiver next year and really force Syracuse's hand and make them play him? Of course. That can definitely happen. But when you compare him to Jamie Tremble, and as far as who is going to take the big jump next year, Jamie Tremble really doesn't have any competition. Yeah, Dan Villari's there, but Dan Villari's more of a blocking tight end. Jamie Tremble is literally coming in to be Oronde Gadsden 2.0. And also, think of it this way. Syracuse has not publicly pursued a tight end this offseason. They haven't. And you can't say the same thing about wide receiver, and you can't say the same thing about defensive line. So overall, when evaluating these 3 players, Jamie Tremble, Emanuel Ross, or KingJoseph Edwards, I think the guy that could take the biggest jump for Syracuse in 2025 is Jamie Tremble, because he is the easiest path to playing time this upcoming season. But I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. Who do you think is going to take the big jump for the Orange in 2025? Now, as far as what is coming up on the podcast in the future, tomorrow, Syracuse basketball is back in action. They are playing North Carolina at home at 6 p.m. Eastern, and there will be a full post-game reaction podcast here on Locked On Syracuse. And thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono and Kenta Gibbs, they keep it real and bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse so this channel can grow and reach all Syracuse Orange fans. And I will see you all again soon.